Welcome to the 2021 DC Retail Summit, forecasting our future, powered by Pepco. This summit will feature one-on-one conversations, storytelling, and curated sessions that explore our small and local business community's amazing ability to pivot and show resilience over the last year and a half. So what's next for our DC retailers? We are building a stronger community and ecosystem to bring innovative ways to support small businesses and their employees. Today, the DC Retail Summit will touch on managing the current economy, equitable growth, and social responsibility. Thank you to the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership, Think Local First, D.C., Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, Executive Office of the Mayor, and Mayor Bowser. Now, get ready for the 2021 DC Retail Summit Live. DC is open.
Good morning and welcome to the 2021 DC Retail Summit, forecasting our future. My name is Keith Sellers, President and CEO of the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership. Thank you all for being here this morning, and thank you to all our sponsors to help make this possible. Mayor Bowser, the Deputy Mayor's Office for Planning and Economic Development, DC Health Link, Think Local First, and of course, our title sponsor, Pepco. We have a full schedule for you today, featuring some amazing businesses and even better people. We will explore the effects these last 18 months have had on our business community and how we have found new and innovative ways to succeed. We will hear directly from business owners and entrepreneurs as they share their stories of change, growth, and reinvention. And then together, we will forecast the future of retail in the district. To kick us off, it is my pleasure to introduce Dave Velasquez, President and CEO of Pepco Holdings. Pepco has been an incredible partner for us and a true leader in DC business. And now, to begin the 2021 Retail Summit, Dave Velasquez.
Good morning. Welcome to the third annual DC Retail Summit. I'm Dave Velasquez, President and CEO of Pepco Holdings, the parent company of Pepco. Our company's headquarters are right here in the district, within minutes of museums, cafes, restaurants, food trucks, a variety of retailers. Our employees love working at our Edison Place location, and it's a great location for me too, as it's just a few metro stops for me to get to work. We're proud that Pepco has been the energy provider to the residents and businesses of the District of Columbia for 125 years. Just as we provide energy to the city, we also get our energy from being part of this vibrant community. We are honored to sponsor today's event because we understand how critical it is for the District of Columbia to recover fully from this pandemic and continue to grow and thrive. At Pepco, we believe that as a key service provider and major employer, we have an important role to play in this recovery. We're also a customer, procuring goods and services from a number of local businesses, with a particular focus on supporting minority, women, and veteran-owned operations. With 359,000 customers of our own here in the district and almost 900,000 customers in the surrounding counties, we understand deeply the individual and collective challenges we all continue to face as the pandemic draws on. I was honored to serve on Mayor Bowser's Reopen DC committee to explore ways that the city can come out of this even stronger than before. The success of our small businesses and retailers is central to our recovery plan. To assist, Pepco Holdings provided grants totaling $1 million to businesses in our service area to help them continue operating and supporting their staff. Along with the Mayor's administration, the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership is focused on reimagining our city with the goals of retaining our businesses as well as attracting the type of investment that provides equitable opportunities for our many communities. Pepco is proud to be a founding member of this organization. When I reflect on the past year and a half, 3 words come to mind: resilience, adaptability, and innovation. We've witnessed the resilience of essential workers, from doctors and nurses to bus drivers, grocery store cashiers, to our own line workers, all who continue to power our communities on the front lines. We've seen the human spirit adapt to difficult conditions and keep moving, even in masks and while 6 feet apart from one another. We've also found new ways to work and stay connected. From our small businesses and retailers, we've appreciated and benefited from your innovation, whether through new curbside and takeaway options, outdoor exercise, salon services, and even ice cream shipped overnight. At today's summit, we hope to provide you with more resources and tools to help support your innovative spirit and your bottom line. Let's learn from each other and work together as we all have the same goals: a strong economy, thriving business community, and a model city that's one of the best places to live, work, and do business in our country. Thank you, and enjoy the summit.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third annual DC Retail Summit. My name is Sabungli Cook, and I am the Director of Business Development and Strategy in the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. In my office, one of our missions is to support the growth and development of small and local businesses across the district. We always say small businesses are the backbone of the economy, and the significance of our small and local businesses community have on the city is unmatched. DC contains over 19,000 small businesses, which constitute 81% of all businesses in the district. More importantly, DC small businesses support 154,000 jobs, meaning 1 in 4 jobs in the district is with a small business. This is why the Retail Summit is so important. Small and local businesses continue to stand the test of time, give back, and pour into our great city. Hosting the Retail Summit is one of the many ways we express our gratitude, support, and nurture our small business community in return. During this year's summit, we're shifting gears and focusing on storytelling, providing one-on-one speaking sessions, and hearing directly from DC businesses. We have a rockstar list of speakers that you've already heard and we'll hear more of. I am so excited that you all will experience what we have in store. Thanks again for tuning in. We hope you leave feeling full of excitement, information, and motivation to press on. Thank you.
Why we chose to stay open is a complicated question. It's probably a very huge calculus equation. Why we chose to stay open. It took this amount of crazy, this amount of just insane support from our own crew and the greater community, and a whole overarching variable that was, how can we utilize Hook Hall, a very large venue space here in DC, and convert it into a relief center to provide support, education, and supplies for those in the hospitality community who were suddenly out of work. And why we chose to stay open was because we instantly saw the impact at a time of such uncertainty for hospitality workers in the region, where it went from being, oh, we're gonna be closed for maybe 2 weeks to maybe 4 weeks, to we don't know when we're going to reopen. It felt only right for us to continue to open our doors, to provide just one beacon, a small little bit of hope. And what we realized from speaking with a lot of the guests who are coming, a lot of the recipients, was oftentimes coming to the daily meal distribution was the one time a day where they were having conversation with someone else, where someone else was asking them how they were. And that became the guiding light for us. How could we continue to be that one point, that one beacon for people, so that we all knew that there was a place, and that if we could continue to unite as a hospitality community, where everyone, regardless of how large or how small the company was, we had small mom and pop shops dropping off a dozen meals that they could, to the larger organizations who were able to donate just so much more. But the fact that all of it together was what provided the support, and at the end of the day, provided the hope. And if we could continue to help provide that hope, we knew that DC as a community and as a hospitality industry would reopen, and we would come out of it not just with a reopen in this idea of turning the lights back on, but we would all come out of it stronger because we were coming out of it together.
Carry me Aki, go a Linstead market, not a quality would sell. Let me rephrase that in American words. I carried my market goods to the DC market, not a cent worth did I sell. Greetings and salutations, everyone. I am Dr. Claire Nelson, Chief Ideation Leader of the Futures Forum and a Forbes Top 50 Female Futurist, and I'm located right here in the district. It is such a joy to be here on this day and to begin this day's conversation with Dr. James Reed, an impact investor, founder, CEO, and educator. And James, as I will now call him, as he says all his friends should call him, is here with me to discuss DC retail now and tomorrow. This is actually a welcome party for James, you see. He is here in DC as the new Johnson Chair for Entrepreneurship at Howard University. And might I add, he also will serve as Senior Advisor to the Center for Women and Global Leadership. So, James, you have come at a time at really pregnant pause, a time when we must make choices about the future of retail, how to create the future we want. And I do believe your experience will lend so much to this conversation. So I'm going to jump right in. 8 years ago, you were talking about this coming change. You were talking about this future, this new kind of conscious capitalism that would be needed, a combination of humanist thinking and yes, consciousness about the future. Now, you decided to take a big leap from investment banking to become the CEO of a failing budget-conscious brand for fat black women. I'm going to be honest. Okay, I'm one of those, so let me talk about it. All right. People thought you were crazy, certifiable. But now you have proven them wrong. You have had the last laugh. You were actually able to turn Ashley Stewart around through building an ecosystem of partnerships, of social capital at all levels of the enterprise, and also with your community of consumers. So the turnaround of Ashley Stewart has proven your point. Now we're at the new now, COVID, shuttered stores, failing businesses, and a rapidly changing retail space. Tell me, as you look into the future, what's the then? What next? What is retail tomorrow? What does that look like?
Hi, DC, and thanks, Dr. Nelson. Look, I've always believed that retail is just a reflection of the way that we live. You know, yes, it's an industry and it's a thriving industry, but it's just a reflection of people. And so 8 years ago, I guess I saw a world that I felt like I had studied in the 19th century, actually, during the antebellum South. Just massive movements of changing in systems that are hard for us to fathom because we go through life thinking life should operate like a very regimented monopoly board. Right, these are the rules. You land on community chest, you draw a card. All right, you land on chance, and then sometimes you go to jail and there's free parking. But when you look at the history of the world, particularly across not just American-centric world, but global history, these seismic shifts in systems occur they occur every 60 to 100 years. We just don't live long enough to remember it. So eight years ago, I just thought we were entering into a world that sadly was going to represent the worlds that some of the science fiction writers write about. A Ray Bradburyan world that was a bit dystopian, that people would be lonely, and that there would be an emphasis more on the ability to be human in the face of technology and just a surfeit of financial capital, and that there would be a need for human capital. And I think that's where we are now, given I had a hard time getting people to believe me 8 years ago, which is why I took the step of actually having to do it. Mm-hmm. But today, given the world that everyone's lived in since last February, everyone has lived through this existential crisis. The reality that we all live in, that you're raised to believe in, to read in children's books, these are not foregone conclusions. There are no guarantees in life. And so the retail industry, as a reflection of life, there are no guarantees in retail industry either. The rules change. But one rule, just to give people hope, that I stress to my children, I've tried to live a life like this, and I've failed too, but I've strived. The rules that do not change are the rules that bind human beings together. Things like kindness and generosity and a collective will of non-financial capital, of a barter economy, of investments in time and friendship. Those things never go out of style. Yeah. No matter what the system is and no matter what century we live in. And I believe that as we enter more into this conversation, I would like to discuss more about the importance of the exchange of social capital to a lot of the listeners today.
Yeah, actually, you talk about kindness, and there's this term called kind capital that's going around. For me, when I think about tomorrow, I tend to start at 2030 because, that's a pull year for the world. We've already agreed, supposedly, or how many countries in the United Nations, that we want this better world inscribed and enshrined in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And goal number 17 talks about partnership, and it's by the top of my head. And partnerships involves the private sector. Partnerships involves capital. Partnerships then involve not just big companies, but also retail, because they also are packaging stuff in plastics and, or making clothes, all these things. When you think about 2030 and this idea of retail then and kind capital, do you think we might be able to redesign our consumerist thinking so that retail actually becomes a way to reprogram and reset this future, which is built not just on financial capital, but also takes into account kindness capital, social capital?
So one of the things that I always have liked about the retail industry, my first job, like many of you listening, was in retail. I bussed tables, I washed dishes at Red Lobster. When you really deconstruct what retail is, there is a transactional component to retail, which is a lot of the financial industry. There's a lot of innovation going on in smart payments, direct payments, prepayments. That's all changing. But when you really look at retail, there's a whole other part of a transaction that has nothing to do with the physical product or money. There is an exchange of pleasantries, a connection, they call it retail therapy for a reason. There is a palliative to stress that retail provides, right? There's a comfort to being part of a neighborhood, part of a community. Those things are things that one can compete on. It's very hard. Many of you are small business owners that are listening. It is daunting to compete against some of these incredibly well-capitalized, right? Very futuristic, tech-driven companies, and it's tough to have a fair fight. Yeah. But I want everyone to know that at Ashley Stewart, 8 years ago, we had no Wi-Fi, we had no computers in the stores, we had zero terms. It was cash. It was COD.
Wow.
And I was servicing and working with perhaps one of the most othered communities in America. She was a Black woman, moderate income, urban neighborhoods. And together, we fashioned a business plan that really balanced social capital with financial capital. We couldn't compete just on financial capital. We couldn't compete just on being the most innovative. We were innovative in the way that we were able to unleash the connectivity and collectiveness of what I view to be one of the strongest friendships that existed in the country.
I'm trying to think of 8 years ago in a store without computers. I just don't understand that construct. I mean, you really had your work cut out for you. And you're talking about this idea of social capital. And of course, for small retailers, yes, that's very important. Because a city like DC, which has a gap between the haves and the have-nots, what we want to see happening is inclusive prosperity. So DC retail is not just about the big stores that have, the imprints here that have this depth of financial support, as you say, but also those smaller businesses. So as you think about that, help me understand then, how do you think some of the lessons that you have learned will really help us to think about the policies that we might look at for DC to have, first of all, the economic policies and systems that support these independent retail?
One of the reasons why I am thrilled to be part of the Howard University Entrepreneurship Program is that I think what we're noticing over the last 15, 18 years, even though there's, on the surface of it, much more accessibility to capital, loans, there's a lot of press, right, about we're making more availability of financial capital. What I would call the API between small business owners and accessing that capital, it's still fraught with inefficiencies, right? It's
Yes.
the language that's being spoken from what's being offered to what small businesses can do, it's different. And I think that we all have to do a better job with what I would call sort of the interface or the UX between what's being offered programmatically and what small business owners can, how they access it, how they're spoken to. It's a very human component. We have to invest in better APIs and technology to make the process easier, but so much of this is controllable from, it's going to sound trite, but just from a human standpoint of actually caring, of making sure and seeing through that small business owners have access to the programs that are being offered. I think the other thing I would say is that Ashley Stewart, all it was just a collection of small neighborhood businesses that happened to share the same name. So it was a collection of small businesses. Every business today is a global business.
Yes.
Right? So, and one of the things, the accessibility to e-commerce platforms has just, it's much easier than it was 8 years ago. We were very purposeful in making sure that we were very strong in our physical community nexus. We had great connectivity with the people that were around us geographically, and we amplified those relationships to customers that were 5,000 miles away. But we never supplanted our local neighborhood support, that goodwill there, by just putting our faith in just raw technology and e-commerce. Our physical footprint was very, very important. The friendships, the day-to-day interactions of human beings, very, very important. So we didn't make any technology decisions that didn't enhance the physical relationships. And I think as you look to 2030, we're all living in a world where we're worried about being disintermediated and living in a Blade Runner world. I think those concepts, leaders, people, brands that actually can convey soul and real sensory feeling in a technology-driven world will have a lot of success, even if they are undercapitalized relative to some of the monstrous companies that are out there today.
Yeah, I really am feeling that, because when I see all these like commercials or films that are set in the future, you see this like point of contact when you're walking past a store. They know who you are because your phone is attached to something, and then you're seeing a personalized ad, and I'm like, do we really want to live in a neighborhood where you walk past a store, they're advertising to you all the time? You want to be alone with your thoughts. But at the same time, the experience of COVID, for example, showed us that many small businesses did not have those sorts of partnerships with, let's say, financing companies and their insurance agent, and that allow them to sort of ride the wave or, deepen that little hiding space, that cubbyhole. In fact, you found that many small companies never had the books the right way to even get some of the checks and some of the stimulus checks. So a lot of NGOs then had to rush in and help them, then that also became a commercial transaction. So we're talking about also new kinds of partnerships that need to be institutionalized. One of the things we can take away from this experience should be, what kind of new partnerships? How does agencies or the big chambers of commerce or whatever create these sort of stakeholder conversation spaces that they can better understand what is needed?
I think that's what's going to be needed for us to really change our systems. So let's be frank. The capitalism democracy partnership has been coming off the rails for not just the last 18 months. It's been decades, right? Whether it's because of tax policy, legislative policy, access to capital, the surfeit of capital that some companies can access and some people cannot. It's been going off the rails. What we need now is for people to really pause, to think about the fact that we are, you have to think above the monopoly board, right? And stop going around the board and stop rolling the dice for a second and pause. And so to do that, my view, and part of what I'm doing the past year, is that I believe that it's going to take the formation of these, quote, orthogonal relationships to come up with new solutions. When you have orthogonal but well-intended meetings and relationships, the ideas that come from these meetings, they're new, right? So part of, with Ashley Stewart, what I asked the ladies of Ashley Stewart 8 years ago, and I asked the global community, and they didn't see it in the beginning, but we showed them, can you picture a world where people who are, quote, minorities are majority? Can you picture a world where women lead? Can you picture a world where all the rules that you think, right? Like we stress income statement. So for you small business owners, the first words generally out of people's mouths are, how much are your sales? How fast are you growing? But just like in life, in business, it is imperative that you lead with your balance sheet. Your balance sheet tells the truth. It's not your income statement. Right? We live in a culture. We've been raised in this country, and this is what's taught in business schools, and this is why I'm actually teaching the opposite thing at MIT. I will be teaching the opposite thing at Howard. Get your balance sheet correct.
But what's on the balance sheet, though? Because the metric cannot just be about the next quarter. The metric cannot just be about the next profits, where you have an insane gap between, the CEO and the person at the bottom. The metric has to be moral. The metric has to be meaningful. And that's when I talk about smart futures, I'm talking about that M in smart being about the metrics and the S being sustainability. And as I'm hearing you talk about women leading, I just thought, for the most part, we saw women-led countries did better, certainly at the start of COVID. They kind of thought with maybe a systems viewpoint. And this idea of this orthogonal relationships, I always see those as beehives, which are much more, beautiful. And of course, bees give us honey and things that we can think about as humans, relevant to us, versus the relationships of, let's say, a hornet's nest or a wasp's nest, which is much more seemingly disorderly. As you think about this idea then of this world, 2030, we know for sure, by census, America is going to be supposedly a majority-minority country, whatever that means. Therefore, conscious capitalism, as you've been talking about it, will really need to take into account the, let's say, the mores, the hopes, the fears of a broader cross-section of people.
I think that's
how are you seeing that?
Yeah, I think you're seeing it in, there are some companies that are doing it much more authentically and organically than others. And look, there's a lot of press and a lot of initiative on things like DEI. I'm not a big acronym person. I think for me, diversity and inclusion it's just part of the broth. It's not a separate initiative. Right? And being a company that is supportive and a great place to work for women and other classically othered groups, these are not initiatives. It just should be. And I think organizations that understand that are winning. Their advertising is much more organic. They have much more support amongst their employee base. What I think one of the most distinguishing features of companies that will win or lose by 2030, it centers around your people. It's your labor. Companies and small business owners who get more creative, more generous, and who actually listen to the people that are working for you about what they want, right? Getting more creative about compensation systems, about potential ownership, about profit share, realizing that sometimes people above a certain level of income, they actually would rather be compensated in the form of time, right? Of health, of flexibility. These are all different forms of compensation systems. We're just programmed in our current systems to say all people want once they walk into a professional environment is money. And money is important. It is a piece of the compensation. And you're seeing that in what's happening today. I just read a report. Is it 65% of people in the country today are looking for another job?
Exactly.
They're not happy.
Right.
Right? And so the way our whole accounting system's wired, and again, I'm going to speak some accounting speak, companies that are successful in retaining their employees have less churn, right? They have less expense. But because GAAP doesn't require you or to capitalize your retention future costs, you don't know which companies are doing a better job retaining their companies. If it was actually forced to be put into earnings, you would see. The leadership, the style of leadership, the style of organizations will have to change. It's one of the things that I've been teaching about. But it's scary for leaders to lead an organization where you are actually in a distributed authority sort of way.
Well, but here's the issue. But many small businesses, to bring it back to like the mom and pop, black woman owned, immigrant owned, whatever store in DC, mom and pop, second generation. So it's husband and wife or mother and child or whatever running the business. That's a different kind of a leadership, right? Because, they have different challenges.
Yes.
In some instances, the elders may not want to listen to the youngers, etc. And I'm really wondering if perhaps one of the things you might want to think about at this center, you're talking about the Center for Entrepreneurship, should not focus in on also the dynamics of leadership in a family-owned structure or closely held second and third generation businesses in DC who are feeling squeezed, that there needs to be some special, programming or some kind of policy conversation that really can be hosted perhaps at Howard to bring them together to talk about these things, leadership, and how do you hear your child who you think, I'm the one that grew you, you can't tell me what to do, I started this business before you were born, and hear them and make those shifts so that the business can succeed. Is there something that you think might be an avenue of coming up with some ways forward for DC?
Yes. So first, for your listeners, I was the son of a small business owner. My parents immigrated here. My dad was a pediatrician, and it was during the world in the 70s and 80s where you could actually hang a shingle out and be a sole owner pediatrician. I don't think you can really do that anymore. My dad used to visit patients at their home. It's a country that is no longer, to me it's sad that country doesn't exist anymore. So I lived through watching my father struggle with the systems requirements of reimbursements. He didn't understand. At his eulogy, my sister laughed and said, my dad thought that Apple was not going to be a successful company because the computer didn't come with instructions. Okay, so my dad was a small business owner.
Yeah.
So one of my hopes of coming down here, and please, I'm new to the city, please reach out to me. I could use all the help. I would love for Howard to be a convening place for policymakers, small business owners, academics, venture capitalists, retail executives. Part of my excitement is to be able to host people that really want to help solve a problem. And I think that the solutions that we have to come up with, we have to listen really well. No one really knows. Wow. And you have to come to the problem. Similar, when I first came down and met all the ladies of Ashley Stewart, I told them, I may be on paper the least qualified person to run this company. I've never done this. I'm a private equity person. I'm a man. I'm not black. But I'll listen. And maybe as we get to know each other, you'll understand when I say that I think the experiences of my mother were very similar in some ways to yours.
Yes.
And we learned together that way. And when we did that, we created these new ideas from seemingly orthogonal experiences. And we saw a world that could be, a world that we wanted it to be. And then I want to emphasize, we use fundamentally very good math. We fundamentally invested in wise technology. You do have to do those things.
Yes.
But the soul of your brand, the ability to take chances, I'm very optimistic for small business owners because no one will take those risks who do not have an ownership mentality. And let's be very frank, this is a survivor. We are in survival mode. We all are. I like those chances when you own your business and you're in survival mode. Those businesses, they survive. You find a way, hook or by crook. And I want to just go back to what I was saying earlier. Do not underestimate the importance of your social capital. It is a good time to be very honest and plain about saying, I need help.
Yeah.
Right? Can we work together to get through this together? And you will start forming business alliances that you didn't think were possible. I don't view business, and it's a little bit weird for a private equity investor to say this. I've always been of the same mindset, personal and business, to create as many friends as possible. Yeah. I don't really view, it's not a scarcity mindset. It's that one wins, one loses. I've never lived my life like that.
Well, and actually, in fact, that's not going to be a very useful way of thinking. As you said, the consumers, the people who are buying, the people who are selling, the people who are paying, doing the insurance, the finance, are all agents in this ecosystem that is retail, which is a way in which, the stories in which we live our life. As I think about this, and I think about my imaginary 2030 vision statement, I'd really love you to help me think through, if we come through this holy transition that we're going through now, right, and we're able to get these shared stories of what an inclusive, prosperous DC retail community could look like. Help me paint a picture of that. What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What are the restaurants? Are we going to have, say, the plethora, of ethnic foods? Or what are you hoping or that you will be able to say when you look back at today? Hey, my sojourn at Howard University helped to ensure what?
First and foremost, in most every place that I come, I revel in the fact that I help create friendships that endure well beyond me, and generally those friendships are stronger than they say. And I just said, hey, invite me every now and then. You guys are more fun and better connected, and I'll see you later. That's one. I really hope that I'm able to foster new relationships amongst people that don't think that they belong together. It's been the story of my life, right? I think as a country, we need that. I think as an industry, retail, we need that. So that's number one. Number two, I would like to think that I will have helped either invest in money or time or knowledge in a next generation of small business owners. Some of whom, by the way, may become the next Amazon, but some of whom will be very content and realize that the success that they have in having 2, 3, 4 restaurants or 2, 3, 4 clothing stores, that's success, that they're doing a great job employing 20 to 25 people, and that they have self-determination and autonomy, and that they've created generational wealth for their employees. And number three is, I guess number three is for me, it's like I love students. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm at Howard is spending time with the students, right? To really help them picture a world that they want, that they can help create, right? Yeah. And it's hard sometimes. And look, I am a son of immigrants, and I didn't grow up, no one handed me anything. And sometimes life was harder. But life is hard. We're all living hard. But like, I am living a life where I want to be with people who want to be positive, to create solutions to problems.
Yes.
Right? Not just to make money. I've found the things that have been most lucrative in my life, it all came from an earnest desire to solve a problem for someone else.
Right.
And it wasn't my problem. It was someone else's problem. And I just focused so hard in being in this person's shoes and saying, how can I adjust systems to solve this problem?
Right. That's indeed true. The best, I would say, the best way to make sure you're relevant and you're useful and your product or service is, is going to last, is to always be conscious that you're there to serve. Yeah. And as a function of your service, then you'll be allowed the return of your capital. You serve, you get the return of capital. One word in terms of your feeling, beside hope.
I think the flip side, I live a life of oxymorons. I'm concerned.
Okay.
I am, and it's not financial policy, monetary policy, tax policy. There's a lot of things I'm concerned about there. What I'm most concerned about, and what I believe retail can play a very critical role in helping shift attitudes, is I'm concerned about increasingly people being isolated, mentally and emotionally unwell.
Yes.
And we're losing a sense of accountability.
Yes.
Right? To other people, to the social fabric. That's what I'm most concerned about. If there's any industry that can attitudinally shift that feeling, is it not retail? Is it, 25, 30% of the workforce is somehow involved in retail? You're dealing with people.
Yes.
I hope that the retail industry can play a leadership role in restoring some accountability and social fabric in our country.
Yes. I am going to bet on that. I'm going to say in something that retail indeed is about not just the buying and selling, the transaction of things, but also the transaction of relationships and feelings and meanings, and that's way of knowing yourself as community. I want to just close by saying, first of all, thank you so much, James, for helping us have this conversation. And as I think about DC, I've lived here for more than half my life, almost 40 years. And I love this place. I love this city. I love the smell of it. I love the feel of it. I love the fact that, when I used to crave Jamaican food, I could go to Brown's Bakery, which is no more. And when I used to crave a roti, I could go to Rita's, which is no more. And so those of you who have been around understand what I'm talking about. So we want to ensure that DC retains some of that, that vibe, that soul. Mm-hmm. We want to see retail help us continue to have that soul. So retail, yes, you will always have the big box. Yes, we'll have AI doing this and AI doing that. But we're hoping that together, the people who make up the city, the people who make the policy, the stakeholders can create a story for DC tomorrow, DC retail tomorrow, that really puts people, planet first, and see those 2 billion blocks as a way to create a prosperity that is more shared, more inclusive. So I'm looking forward to working with you at Howard University, and I'm looking forward to working with this organization to ensure that DC retail today and tomorrow, now and tomorrow go forward. Let me just sum up in the way I always sum up my conversations. The future is embedded in the landscape around us. Indeed it is. And though the road may seem rough right now and rocky, I do believe we can face it with faith if we look through the world and look through the windows with smart lens. I do believe that we can together, again, the operative word, together, co-create smart futures and a flourishing city, a flourishing country, and a flourishing world. And so, as we always say in Jamaica, walk good, safe journeys. Ubuntu.
Hi, I'm Aaron Johnson, CEO of Unities Incorporated. We started in 1991. And our main focus is providing custom printed and embroidered apparel to local schools and businesses, families, churches, etc. COVID created really a time where we really had to make a hard pivot in order to keep our business open and thriving. We've moved all of our custom screen printing and embroidery ordering processes to our online platform. And generally speaking, you know, my background is that I was a street vendor. And as a street vendor, every day you have to pivot. And we were able to do so successfully without any governmental relief or any assistance from the government. It was really the contributions and the togetherness of the community. I think the sentiment was that the people felt like with all that's going on, we're not gonna let this particular business go down. Some people sent us random donations, you know. It was kind of like, you know, really heartfelt and touching when people would do that. That pulled us through. They made it up. They did it on purpose. They said, we're gonna make sure we support you on purpose. And that was really touching and heartfelt. And it was like, it was a necessary thing, because really at the end of the day, all we have is us, but all we need is us. At the end of the day, it's because of community support. That's really the only reason we're still here after 30 years. Matter of fact, we'll be celebrating 31 years in January. That's something I want to share and let the world know. It's kind of like, don't be afraid, but at the same time, you know, keep your lines of communication and keep your relationships with the community, you know, keep them pure so that, you know, when we need each other, we're there for each other.
Welcome, everyone, to the Next Gen in Retail Conversation. I'm Harold Fisher. I am the host of the News Talk program, The Daily Drum, on WHUR and Sirius XM, channel 141 with the Howard University Radio Network. Going out of business and then coming back is not a new thing for retail. From digital technology enhancing experiences, e-commerce, home and curbside delivery, 2020 forced retailers to reimagine the online and offline customer service experience. Well, today, we're going to talk about how the pandemic has reshaped their small and local businesses. We have some great minds with us this morning. I'm joined by Victoria Lai. She is the founder and owner of Ice Cream Jubilee. She's been in business since 2014. We have Dr. Gautam Vadakapat. He is the founding director of the George Mason University Center for Retail Transformation. And we also have Yolanda Dandridge James. She is the CEO of Insight Opticians. She has been in business since 2005. Thank you all for joining the conversation. I appreciate it. Let me first start with you, Ms. Lai, and I will, admonish you for not bringing ice cream for the entire class.
I agree.
But as I said, you've been in business since 2014, but the world shut down in March of 2020. You were already having a thriving, growing business. When the pandemic hit, what were your first thoughts in reference to your business plan? What were you most concerned about?
Thank you for having me here.
Sure.
At Ice Cream Jubilee, we opened in 2014, and no year has been the same. We went from one store to 2 stores to another kitchen to expanding in wholesale. And so when the pandemic hit and we closed and had to reinvent how we thought about retail and how we thought about reaching our customers, it was almost just like another evolution of our business. I think that's the optimistic way of looking at it, as opposed to looking at a catastrophe. But the difference in this evolution was, my first thought was, how am I going to make sure that all of my staff and our family of employees stay safe, stay housed, that their children have health care and child care, so we can continue getting back to normal whenever we learn that it's time to get back to normal. So we circled the wagons and took stock of what we all needed, whether or not it was a little bit of bonus to pay the rent before assistance came in. How can we look out for each other, and then how can we get back to business?
How many people are we talking about for your business at that time during that first shutdown? Your business isn't a teeny tiny business. You're talking about a lot of people. How many people were we talking about making this adjustment for?
Sure. So in March 2020, we were just coming out of the winter, so we're probably at our lowest staffing time, and it doesn't include when we have all of our summer employees. So we had about 40 employees that we're taking care of. Many of them have been with us for 5 or more years.
Ms. James, same question. During the shutdown in March, and your business had already been extremely active, what were your first thoughts as a businesswoman about how you were going to make this adjustment? Not the shift, because that's a different issue, but just the initial adjustments to keep your business afloat.
My main concern.
And grab your microphone for us, please, if you can.
Yes.
Thank you.
My main concern was we do have a teeny tiny business. So my main concern was my customer. I knew they needed to see. Some of them have health issues with their eyes. So I was concerned about my customers and how they were going to get to us. So we did shut down for a few days, and then we realized that people were stepping on their glasses, they were drinking and having fun, and they needed repairs. They needed screws. People still needed eye exams. So we just had to figure out how we were going to approach this. A lot of it was by curbside. We did a lot of curbside. I started, even though I wasn't a fan of virtual fitting, I started doing virtual fitting and sending selections of glasses to customers.
And to that point, I wear glasses. That is a very personal business. Some would say it's an intimate kind of interaction between customers and the business owner. Was it difficult to make that shift? And I'm thinking about, just from your perspective, you wear glasses also. Was there a point at which you had to just kind of sit down and say, how am I going to do this?
I did. I was doing some virtual fitting before the pandemic. So a lot of times I would ask for certain details, pictures, measurements of the glasses that they were wearing. And I'm very visual. So from there, I would make a selection and send it to the customer. And then as they would try on, I would once again do a Zoom call, and just to get an idea what would work for them, along with knowing their prescription. So my virtual fitting is a little more in-depth compared to a Warby Parker or some of these online vendors.
Dr. Velasquez, as we know, there were some businesses that did not survive
more than some
2020. And there were others that did. From your perspective, what was the difference?
I think you heard it here, right? People who prioritized their employees and their customers, and they figured out, they were creative in how they came up with solutions, they were able to manage that big black swan event. Those who were not able to had some issues. And the other aspect that they dealt with was the issue of actual financial liquidity. People who had financial liquidity were able to manage that transition a little bit better than those who did not.
Talk to me about that, the thought process, because business owners, both of these business owners, these things do not just come out of the air. There are thought processes, there are plans, and the like, Dr. Velasquez, and you have to be resilient as well as creative. For some people, the pandemic was a nail in the coffin. For others, this was, as Ms. Lai was suggesting, an opportunity. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head, right? For many people, this was a nail in the coffin because they were already feeling the pressures of how retail was evolving. And as a consequence, they had to shut down. This was just, we use this term often, this just accelerated their demise in many ways. For others, this was an opportunity to pivot. And the real reason for this is that there are lots of headwinds that retail is facing from multiple different directions, right? The bigger companies, the technology that people have to implement, how do you actually keep costs down? How do you get employees in the stores? And all of these came to fruition at the same time during this pandemic. And that's really what made some people close business, if that makes sense.
Ms. Lai, what was the most difficult time for you after March of 2020 during the course of this pandemic?
Well, after March of 2020 and in April when we reopened, we were getting to learn about how we could operate safely. I was talking to my staff every single day to say, what was your experience with the customers? Do you still feel safe? Do you still feel like we're doing the right thing? And having that feedback and hearing from them, I think just reinforced our trust. That was very important. What was very challenging was when the world began to open up again, and different customers and different employees had different levels of comfort of what they wanted to do. Say, maybe there was a customer who was fully vaccinated and thought they shouldn't have to wear a mask indoors or outdoors because some scientists were saying that. Some of our staff were saying, well, we see so many customers. We're not comfortable with customers doing that. What should we do now? And so addressing those personal concerns was a challenge, but having that trust and communication already made it a little bit easier.
I see you nodding your head, Ms. James, about some of those dark times. Share that with us.
I went through the same thing.
And hold your microphone up for us.
I went through the same thing. We had to gain the customer's trust once we did open our doors and stop doing the curbside. We locked our door, number one, because we couldn't have people just come into the store, picking up glasses and trying them on. So every time somebody tried on a pair of glasses, we had to disinfect. So if I had my door open, we would have constantly been cleaning glasses as opposed to helping the customer. So that was one thing we did. And then we started setting up appointments once we closed down the curbside. And customers really appreciated that. They liked the idea of having that personalized service. They could come in we gave them an hour, and they really loved that, to sit down with Tony and I, make sure they had the perfect fit, and make sure their prescription was on point. The same thing would happen when they would pick up the glasses. I really had a chance to put my optical skills to work, because it takes time if somebody's having a visual problem to find out what's going on. Another thing we had a problem with was the fact that our doctor didn't come back. So we had to find a doctor close by that we could refer the customers to, but we also had to make sure that when they went to that optical shop, that it was a shop that didn't clash with what we carried. So, and we're still doing the same thing. We still haven't found a doctor, but it's working out pretty good as far as eye exams are concerned.
Yeah, okay, and see I think that's one of the challenges. Your doctor left when, or you lost your doctor when?
Right at the pandemic.
So March.
He had an office right across the street, and he would come over and do eye exams for us, like 2 or 3 times a week. And at that point, we didn't have a doctor, so it's like, okay, we had to find someone.
So that's the pivot.
That was the pivot for that.
That's the pivot, and so you're still pivoting.
I'm still pivoting. Every day is a pivot.
You're still pivoting now.
I'm dizzy.
or in this case, I guess you moved from pivot to pirouette.
Right, really.
So how does that pirouette look now for your business model? How have you been able to thrive and survive pirouetting when you don't have a doctor I mean, that's a key part of your business.
It is. It's a key part. What we've done, like I said, we found a very good doctor we refer people to. And he's like right around the corner. And another thing we did was by offering this service, of like that individual service, people tell other people about us and how safe they felt and how the place was clean and how they would witness the fact that we were cleaning each frame. So our business is really word of mouth.
Dr. Vaticapat, you were going to make a comment talk to me about the pirouette, because that's a long-term challenge. Yep. She has lost a major part of the business, and whether you're designing glasses, coming up with Tutti Frutti ice cream, or anything at all, if you lose a major part of your business, that could be the death knell, or, as they may say in business school, an opportunity.
Well, it's glass half empty, half full kind of a problem, right? And I fully agree. Like that pirouette is still ongoing, and people are struggling to figure out where do you actually end up. Let me tell you what I see happen most often is that people leverage technology. They go into social media and they try to get people. Yolanda just talked about how word of mouth is important, right? So they try to get that to happen. They try to build these connections with customers. We use this word, customer intimacy. Get to really know your customer. Give them what they really need. That's what people are trying to pivot around and figure out what's the new need. Customer needs and values have changed. And what most successful retailers are doing now is trying to figure out where is it that they need and values are and deliver on that.
Ms. Lai, you were going to share something.
Yeah, I was going to jump in about another challenge to reopening. As customers think that we're a different degree of open, or businesses are, landlords also think that we're at a different degree of opening. And that's a conversation that every brick and mortar retail owner needed to have. And it's ongoing as news develops and the virus develops and our society develops. Having a strong relationship with my point of contact at each of my landlord's offices was very important. But at the same time, that is a less intuitive conversation to have and much more math-based, reasoned-based. And I was able to have that because I had strong, organized profit and loss statements from the last 3 years, and I could say, this is why you want me to stay. This is why we can be a partnership together, and develop that trust in a different way, have a different sort of conversation. But fundamentally, it is that same intimacy and trust.
But to that point, landlords are the very, allow me to, no pun intended, are the foundation of brick and mortar. They are brick and mortar. And landlords have suffered mightily during the course of the pandemic as businesses have failed, have not come back, or in some cases they have slowed, their tenants have slowed. Those conversations, as you're suggesting, are not at all easy. Moving forward for businesses that are prosperous, larger business, smaller business, and I'll ask you again, Ms. Lai, is the next evolution to own your own building?
I think owning real estate has always been a goal in the United States. I think retail, retail or not retail, and our tax laws are designed around that. So yes, if you can own your own building in a prosperous growth area, do that. However, it is very challenging, and you'll see that retail owners have different experiences when you have a large national or international corporation who owns rapid development, multi-use businesses, or a local family who owns several different mixed-use properties within the city. You know, they are not always, no one landlord is the villain that we can easily make broad statements about. However, choices are difficult both for tenants and landlords, and sometimes one side wins more than the other.
You were going to say something, Dr. Vaticapet, when I mentioned owning one's own building.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, one, I fully agree with what was just said. There is no villain in this, right? We are all in this together. And I think that's the key thing that needs to happen, is to understand from a real estate perspective as well as a tenant perspective, hey, let's do this dance together. Let's figure out what is it that makes sense jointly, a little bit more flexibility. There's quite a bit of rigidity in some of these things that happen, some of these fixed leases, for instance. Let's have a little bit more flexibility in all of these things. That's the main driver that I will push forward to, is those conversations we heard someone speak earlier, right? Hey, let's listen. Let's really listen to the problems, jointly figure out the solutions.
Ms. James, you are located really in the heart of DC.
Yes, right down the street.
Right down the street, and microphone, please. I'm going to have to
Sorry
get you to yell
about
for me. That's quite all right.
Yeah, I'm right down the street. And the first thing we did when we knew this pandemic was starting, we contacted the landlord and set up a way to, we told them, how are we going to do this? We probably will not be able to pay rent for a few months. So basically what they did, they gave us the option of either extending on the end of the lease or...
Try her microphone, please.
Is that better?
Okay.
Is
Go
better?
ahead.
Okay. Either extending the lease or once we pick back up, they gave us till September to, start making payments along with our regular rent. And we really appreciated that. Every month we send them P&L statements to let them know, where we were at that time. And they've been working with us. They were really great. I was kind of blessed to have this type of landlord.
And that type of tenant too.
Oh,
I just
right.
interject because showing your
you just have
books-
to, right. And not just the
and
landlord, but with vendors. We were like on it right away, just letting them know, how can we work together? And then, then eventually, like as customers started coming in, and what helped us out by July, people were really spending money on glasses again. So I still had up until September to not have to really pay rent. So it kind of worked out. It was the pandemic. It's sad. People lost their lives, but we're doing pretty good. Nowhere near what we were doing, but we just had to adjust.
Which brings me, and I'll let you continue with this question, with the pretty good. We are now at the end of summer of 2021. What does pretty good mean for you?
I'm able to pay rent. I'm able to collect a paycheck. And as far as I had to cut down on inventory, but that's okay because I don't have the traffic anyway. So pretty good. We're able to pay our bills.
Mm-hmm. And what
I
about
can unlock my door.
And your staff? Because this is not just about inventory, profit and loss, but this is also about, for lack of a better term, the mental health of the people who've really stuck with you to support the business that you started. How are they?
They're doing great. My former business partner stepped down, and so therefore the person that's been assisting me for 8 years, I ended up making him my business partner. So that gave him the drive for us to work together. And we wanted to make this thing happen. So, we were able to survive because I gave this person a chance, a part of the business.
Ms. Lai, are you all pretty good, great? How has your business changed over the past 16 or 17 months now?
Well, it's September now. We're just coming off of a summer season. It was very hot, as you recall. So we did good business. It was wonderful to be able to reach so many customers. With the Nationals baseball season and the tourists coming to Washington, D.C., and the office tenants not being what they were, we're not at our sales levels as before. However, I think that we're doing great because we've been able to really launch and expand our non-retail lines of business. Well, actually, it's all retail. It's just non-brick and mortar. So
What does that mean,
nationwide shipping.
Okay.
So we ship our ice cream with dry ice. So our friends who used to come to Ice Cream Jubilee every week, but moved back with their parents in Indianapolis or are doing school from home in Boston, they can receive Ice Cream Jubilee on dry ice shipped to them every week or as often as they want. We're also sold in Whole Foods in 7 different states, and having the bandwidth and the focus to expand that area of business has balanced out all of Ice Cream Jubilee and learned more about our customers in different places.
What have you learned, Ms. James, through all of this? What is the aha moment for you when you look back between March 2020 and now?
Like I said before, customers are job one. That's number one. I mean, it's great when somebody comes through my door and they say, oh, I'm so glad you're open. I'm so glad you made it. Customer appreciation, I must say.
Any advice for business owners who are just starting out or may perhaps be in the same position that you're in right now, who have come through this process but are still just wondering, what the heck did I do?
I would recommend always having your paperwork ready, your P&Ls, because I know a lot of businesses that didn't survive, they were kind of sketchy before this. And when they had to apply for the PPP and all that, they didn't have their act together so much. And just making sure you stay on top of your paperwork and having it ready.
Aha moment for you, Ms. Lai?
Creativity is everything. When people weren't walking in our doors in April 2020, I thought to myself, what do we have an infinite amount of? It's creativity. So I worked with my staff and brainstormed and came up with new ice cream flavors, and then put out on social media and to our email list that we will bring this to your neighborhood. We will drop it off safely with dry ice to your curbs. And people wanted to try new things. They wanted to do something different. And that was able not only to get some cash coming through the door, but give ourselves a sense of purpose when we had to close and figure out what was going on. I would agree with what Yolanda was saying about keeping your books in order. And then I would follow that up with be very, very aware of the people and institutions that want to help you as an individual and a small business. I have to give a plug for the DEMPED and DSLBD, all of the DC institutions, and I also worked with Arlington County for my Arlington store, were very easy to reach out to when there were grants available, when I had questions, if I had an issue with DCRA. There was always somebody to talk to, and so I applaud the DC government for doing that. But if you never make that call, if you don't stay on hold to talk to that person, you'll never get your answer, and you won't get the help and possibly money that's there to make sure that business owners and businesses succeed.
Dr. Velasquez, this has also been transformative for you personally. I mean, you've kind of carved out your own, cottage industry, in that you've created this information center based on what has come out of the pandemic. Talk to us about that and what you've heard from both of these ladies.
Yeah, so the center was launched in the peak of pandemic, and the idea is that 90% of retail is small and medium. size retail, and they are the glue that holds the community together. And what we learned through the process was that we talk about technology, we talk about data analytics and supply chain and things like that, but the real critical element to success is relationships. Building relationships, being very strong in your relationship, not just with the customers, but with the employees and the other people, the whole ecosystem. If you're able to do that, you can survive and thrive. Consumers want to support local retail. I can't tell you the number of stories where people have said, man, I wish my restaurant was open. As a family, we ourselves have seen like significant decline in the number of restaurants we could visit. And so there is this need and this thrive, and this has become salient. We just need to give them support to actually succeed in the new world that emerges post-pandemic.
Was there an aha moment for you during this process?
For me, the aha moment was the resilience and creativity of the retailers. It was phenomenal, the efforts they went through to keep the doors open, to give employees paychecks, when I know some of their books were like they were actually giving up on things themselves to actually make that happen. That was the aha moment for me. That's why I'm so energized about retail.
I think this is a great point to end on. I want to thank all of you for sharing your expertise, your experience. I'm glad to see that you've all come out on this side of the pandemic. As we know, as they say, this ain't over.
Oh, no.
Not by a long shot, but I really appreciate you coming in Victoria Live with Ice Cream Jubilee, Dr. Gautam Vadakapat with the George Mason University Center for Retail Transformation, and Yolanda Dandridge-James, CEO of Insight Opticians. Thank you all for coming to the DC Retail Summit. I'm Harold Fisher, and we will continue to watch and see what you're doing. The best of luck to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So the story of Sneaker Suite starts with me just being a sneakerhead. I was collecting sneakers at an early age at the Matha, going to PG Plaza, and realizing that this was my route to being independent from everyone else. Sweet Nation was a derivative of Sneaker Suite because I started to do more events with these corporate partners, whether it's automotive, wine and spirits, apparel, and now real estate. There's a three-part model that we focus on. It's authenticity, geniality, and community. And that has allowed us to traverse the atmosphere for years and years and years to now create new experiences like Sandlot. Sandlot Southwest was a project that we started in Buzzard Point, and it was truly just something to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the movie The Sandlot in conjunction with the 2018 MLB All-Star Game, which was in Washington, D.C. But we took it a step further and we said, hey, there's not a space and a place for Black folk to assemble where it's not necessarily considered a beer garden. So we created Sandlot to solve a problem, just as we have with all the other projects that we've done in the past. And now, 2021, we've expanded the Sandlot model to multiple locations in Georgetown, Tyson's Corner, Anacostia, and soon to be in Prince George's County and Montgomery County. But I think the end all of what our story means and what it represents is how you can really have a hobby or something that you love and you're passionate about, and you can turn it into a fully functioning business that, again, solves problems in our communities.
My name is Amy Sedman. I'm the Artistic Executive Director of Story District. We are excited to partner with the DC Retail Summit as we showcase the art of storytelling through these amazing DC local businesses. I have the honor of introducing Sarah Frimpong. She is the CEO and founder of Well Found Foods in Washington, DC. Since 2013, Sarah, also known as Frim, has grown Well Found from a local food incubator into a full-scale wholesale distributing fresh grab-and-go foods in, and today she will be telling a story that touches on the theme of what it has taken to be unbreakable during these incredibly challenging times. With that, welcome Sarah Frimpong.
Hello, suppliers. Effective Wednesday, March 18, the following locations will be temporarily closed. Please suspend all deliveries until further notice. I started my business, Well Found Foods, to make it easier for people to eat better on the go. Over 7 years, we grew to make thousands of meals at our commissary kitchen in DC that we distributed to our coffee bar and university clients across the city. Building that business took me 7 years, and COVID killed it in 7 days. As our coffee shop and our university clients all closed, 98% of our revenues left with them. In those early weeks of the pandemic, we did everything that we could to pivot. We made meals for at-risk communities. We co-packed powders and supplements for a local brand. We even started and stopped a home delivery service in just 1 week. While 98% of our business was gone, 2% of our business was still going. That 2% was a part of a new business line that we had started a few months earlier in 2019. That year, I had taken a business loan, I dipped into our cash reserves, and I bought 3 refrigerated tech-enabled vending machines. When everything shut down, we had 1 machine at a convention center. That was the first to go. We had a second machine at a university. That closed soon thereafter. And our last machine was at one of the only places that got busier in a global pandemic, a hospital. In April, reality hit. Our wholesale business wasn't coming back. If we were going to survive, we needed to grow the 2% of our business, the vending business. With bills racking up and with little money in the bank account, I knew that I had to fundraise to do it. I needed $600,000 to buy machines, build software, and have working capital. That would be our 3-part plan to survive the pandemic. Overnight, I became a fundraising expert. I applied for all of the local loans and relief funds, and I started pitching investors. I pitched a lot of investors. I got it down to a science. I would sit at my kitchen table, I put on my nicest button-down shirt, and I delivered my presentation. 2 months, 40 pitches later, I had no money. Now what? I called one of my advisors. Brian, I don't know what to do. I owe more money than I did at the start of the pandemic, and there are no more loans or relief funds that are going to help to stop the bleeding. He paused and he thought. He said to me, Sarah, I believe in you, and I believe in this business. I'm going to write you the first check. That check was the fuel that I needed. While it wasn't going to save Well Found, what it did was allow us to cross 1 item off of our 3-part plan to survive the pandemic. We started to build our software. After that, it was back to business as usual. I kept pitching with no success until 3 weeks later when I got on the magic call. I was working out of a friend's restaurant that afternoon when I realized that I had a pitch. Give me a half hour, I'll be right back. I'd done this so many times before, and I assumed this would be the status quo. No offers. Still, my business was on the rails. I owed a lot of people money at this point, and I owed Brian money at this point too. So I pushed through. After all, what else could I do? I went to my pre-pitch ritual. I found a quiet corner, I put on my button-down shirt, and I plugged in my computer. I gave my presentation, my advisor and I answered questions, and at the end of the call, we wrapped up to move on to the next one. But then something happened. Instead of saying, thank you so much, we'll follow up, the investor said, this is great, let's do it. I'm going to write you a $200,000 check. We kept our cool, we were very professional on the phone, but as soon as we hung up, we lost it. Can you believe this? Oh my God. This allowed us to cross the 3rd item off of our pandemic checklist, buy machines. Back in March, we only had 3 machines when I got that email to stop the deliveries. Today we have 19 machines, and by the end of this year, that number will be 50. While it was very hard to continue on as I kept hearing no's, trying and trying again is what made the difference. Thanks.
Hello, retail business community. I'm Christy C. Whitfield, Director of the District's Department of Small and Local Business Development, also known as DSLBD. I know these last 2 years have been especially challenging for our small and local businesses, and our retail businesses in particular were among some of the hardest hit. Please know DSLBD has been and will continue to be here to help your retail businesses pivot, survive, and thrive. DSLBD supports local retailers through traditional technical assistance offerings, as well as a myriad of training and informational opportunities in critical areas such as marketing, access to capital, commercial leases, budgeting, and more. This includes support delivered through our Main Streets program, which provides hyper-local assistance in 26 different commercial corridors across the city. In addition to these traditional supports, I also challenge my team daily to re-envision how we champion the district's small and local business community, and this includes reimagining how we provide new and innovative services to best serve you. For example, this year, DSLBD entered into an inventive partnership with the Kiva Hub to provide creative crowdfunding loans to help unbanked and underbanked businesses and entrepreneurs unlock capital. And we are currently supporting the Golden Triangle Bid's new Grow Golden initiative, which connects makers, restaurateurs, and creatives to ground floor pop-up retail spaces. Earlier this year, we prioritized awarding $800,000 in robust retail grants to give our small retailers critical financial support and work closely with our Main Streets to ensure that DSLBD grant funds went directly into the hands of businesses on their corridors. And right now, our team is in the process of awarding market access grants to help district makers who do not have brick and mortar locations. As we continue to navigate through this pandemic together, there is no doubt that challenges lie ahead. But please know that the Bowser administration's support for small and local district retailers remains unwavering. Thank you for your unyielding strength and resilience. It is truly inspirational.
DC HealthLink, there's finally some good news for small businesses. We all know the challenges small businesses have faced during the COVID pandemic. Now, through DC HealthLink, small businesses can offer their employees quality, affordable health insurance. There's no better way to attract and keep employees, and DC HealthLink makes it easy. 0% down on health plan premiums. Auto pay, a secure way to make payments on time. Plan Choice gives employees multiple plan options and allows employers to compete with large companies. And administrative ease, one monthly bill, one payment. DC HealthLink offers big benefits for small businesses. Enrollment is easy and year-round. Visit dchealthlink.com for more information or contact your broker. Don't delay, enroll today. DC HealthLink, a healthy investment for your employees and your business.
Hi, my name is Khaled Pitts. I'm a member of the Executive Board of the DC Health Benefit Exchange and Chair of the Marketing and Consumer Outreach Committee. But more importantly, I'm a small business owner just like you. And I understand all too well the challenges we as small business owners have faced during this pandemic. But I'm here to tell you that DC HealthLink is here for you to help you sustain and successfully grow your business. One thing this pandemic has revealed is the importance of health coverage for ourselves, our families, and our employees. In these challenging times, we can't expect to sustain or even grow our businesses without healthy and engaged employees. And DC HealthLink offers you an opportunity to provide easily and affordably that health security for your small business. How? 0% down on all health plan premiums. AutoPay, an easy way and secure, allowing you to pay your bill on time. And Plan Choice, allowing your employees multiple options for healthcare plans, you one bill, and allowing us as small business owners to compete with larger companies. Visit dchealthlink.com for more information or contact your broker for details. Take it from me. DC HealthLink is a healthy investment for your small business, for you and your employees.
Welcome, everyone, to the conversation on equity, retail leaders in action. I'm Denise Rollard Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer, and your host for this candid conversation with retail leaders who are social entrepreneurs as well. Equity is imperative and indisputable. Understanding where to invest and how to improve the workplace and the community shows measurable actions and commitment to change. These business owners are here to talk about lessons from the global pandemic, inclusive of their social responsibility goals in action. Welcome.
Thank you.
I am so excited. I'm telling you, I've heard some fantastic stories of survival today. And I'm sure that you all have a lot that you can share in this conversation. And so I'm happy to introduce Raheem Wright, who is the CEO of Chez Aline. Welcome, Raheem.
Thank you so much for having me.
And also Anna Vero, owner of Hook Hall. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Okay, of Hook Hall. And Brian Myers, who's with Solid Core.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I'm gonna, first of all, I'm calling you all survivors. I'm calling every business in this community a survivor, because if you're here today, that means that you have a story of survival that this pandemic proved in your spirit and the fact that you're able to continue to do what you do. I'm going to start with you, Raheem, since you're on the end, Rahima, to talk about Chez Aline. And you've been in business now for how long?
I've been in business for a while, and I couldn't agree more that if you made it through COVID or making it through COVID, you're certainly surviving. And I also think it's really important that we understand in order for us to survive, we have to work together. In order for us to survive as a small business community, we have to see that we're stronger together. And we're stronger when we combine our collective, efforts to help each other get through this really hard and difficult moment. And part of this conversation around retail in the district is a conversation of how local government is supporting us, as well as how each small business owner is connecting with the networks that they need to really make it through. So in terms of my company, Chez Aline, I started it after I served in the Peace Corps in 2005, so it's been a while. And our mission is to support living wages for women in small rural communities of northern Ghana. So we work with our suppliers who create and produce this amazing skincare ingredient that we bring to the US market, and we distribute through retail channels like Whole Foods, and most recently we launched with Macy's. And so the whole idea behind our business is looking at how, selling a local product, that's made here is also having global impact. And so immediately during COVID-19, in March of 2020, I woke up to the news of everything that was happening. And I'll say every aspect of my business was impacted, from the suppliers that we work with in Africa to the retail accounts that we had. We had retail at the airport. Because of mandatory shelter in place, we had to close that. We also had to close some locations here in DC, as well as a partnership we had with MGM Resorts. They closed for many months. So almost overnight, over 70% of my business disappeared in terms of revenue.
I want to get back to really talk about what that overcoming was like, and because I want everyone, all of our panelists, to share a little bit about that. I know you, Anna, had to pivot as well. And one thing that Rahima talked about was community. And you and Brian talked about, yours was a global community, Rahima, and then locally. What you tell us about your business, but also, how you had to pivot and think about either supporting your employees that, workers who were not your employees, and the community that you felt as though you had to serve. Talk about that.
So Hook Hall is what we call a community gathering space, but most people know it for our pop-up experiences and it being just a really great place to come and have a cold beer. But for us, at a time where we had to close our doors as well, how we were faced with the question of how can we continue to serve the community, even though we couldn't bring the community within our 2 front doors. And so for us, it was very much about partnership. And so, as part of the hospitality community that was, hit hardest and the fastest, where in DC, 1 in 7 workers in DC works in hospitality.
Mhm.
And that's just an astronomical number of folks who were suddenly impacted overnight. And so what we did was we partnered with other hospitality owners and operators and kitchens and with the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington, who was really phenomenal about taking the phone call about creating a fund. And so we created the Workers Relief Fund with RAMW and raised close to $1 million in order to provide meals for hospitality workers during this time where they otherwise, especially at the beginning, were struggling with even navigating the unemployment system and the social safety net programs. Because as one bartender said to me, I've never had to apply for unemployment. In DC, I always just found another job. And so also helping them navigate some of the emotion that goes along with that, even for some of our own folks who were struggling with, some of the shame and the stigma associated with they need to take the free meal. And so I think that partnership is a really key component to how DC is coming back stronger than ever. I know for us, it wasn't just about the partnerships around the Workers Relief Fund and how we could come together in order to provide meals and resources. It was also about how could we, Hook Hall is based on Georgia Avenue, and how could we partner with other local businesses on Georgia Avenue, especially those that weren't able to reopen as quickly as the hospitality industry could. So how could we partner with the yoga studios and the fitness studios and the other places who desperately needed safe outdoor space? And we have a very large garden space. So how could we partner with them to provide them with free or highly reduced space so that they could continue to activate and build community for their own groups? And so I know that for us, it was a way for us to really feel like we were leaning into our values of the fact that we are stronger as a business community and as a retail community together. How could we partner with, at a time where during the holidays, so many of the festivals and markets that a lot of local artisans they no longer had access to, they weren't available. How could we provide that space for them to still sell their retail goods in a way that was, again, safe, but in alignment with how are we all just gonna, the goal was not how does anyone thrive? It was, to your point, how do we all just survive to get to whatever the other side of this is?
Right. There's so many linkages, and there's a theme I'm hearing, but I'm going to address that in a few minutes. But Brian, Solid Core, this is a place where people actually come to build strength in order to make it through times like this, and then here a pandemic hits your business. Tell us about your experience, your business, and then the experience.
Absolutely. So Solid Core, we operate a chain of boutique fitness studios based on the principles of Pilates. That being said, our spaces are much more than just a place for people to go to work out. They're a place where people gather and build community and connection with the fellow coaches that are there, the other people who are in class with them. And instantly, our business went from having its best year ever as the fastest growing fitness concept in the country to having revenue of 0. And we laid off 98% of our people. We went from a staff of over 600 to 13. And all of us took significant, 70+% pay cuts in order to, as you said, just survive. But in those early moments, the thing that became most important was leaning on our core values. And first and foremost, that core value of community that you've heard now a couple of times really was where we focused our energy. And so, we wrote letters to our staff members who we had to lay off. We, of course, supported them through the unemployment process. We wrote handwritten notes to our top clients just to check in on them to say, hey, we are here for you. Because at the end of the day, Solid Core is about more than a workout. It's about that community and about building and supporting each other through these hard times. And that looked a little bit different in those early days of the pandemic, but we felt that was our role nonetheless.
You know, I'm going to go back to the theme that I kind of heard through your experiences, the kind of businesses you all own and who you serve. And, you know, Brian, when we look at this through an equity lens, same thing with the rest of you, we know that this pandemic impacted some communities more so than others, right? So, you know, Anna, when we're talking about, you know, the immigrant community that are really highly represented in the hospitality industry, I mean, Rahama, you were looking at, you know, folks from the continent of Africa and Ghana trying to get their products out. And Brian, you know, you're kind of in an, you know, we all would love to be, to go, you know, to have memberships and health spas and all that. And we know that a lot of people from various communities don't have access. And your face there probably made the difference to let folks know, look, you're welcome, you can help, we want to help you. Let's talk about, you know, the communities that you served and some things that you felt you needed to do to really reach out. And Rahima, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, so I'm part of the small business community here in DC,
Yeah.
and in 2018, I started a program called the DC Pop-Up, where we would work with women and minority-owned businesses and give them the opportunity to get their products out there. And it was supposed to just be something that we did for the holidays, and we brought together 30 plus brands and curated a space on H Street. And then it turned into more pop-ups. We did one at the airport. We did a couple at the downtown holiday market, to the point of the markets being a great place for people to get revenue for their companies. And so with COVID-19 and everything that was happening, this community is women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and we all know that we have a much harder time getting our products out there. If you're running a CPG company, it's almost impossible to get shelf space, and it's also really expensive to open up your own shop. And because of those barriers to entry, I started this program so that we collectively could come together, activate spaces, drive sales, and get exposure and marketing for our brands. And so one of the things we did last year is we did the downtown holiday market again, even though there were still a lot of questions around whether or not it was safe. And because it was an outdoor market, I felt like it was something we could do. And so we consolidated and curated this really great tent. And it was one of the huge drivers to getting people end of year sales for a year that was really hard for everyone. It was also an opportunity for people to know that the business community is not going anywhere. It's been really hard to see all the, you know, shuttered venues and to see all the fun places that we eat at and we go to, and it's not there anymore. And I think it was a moment to show that, listen, we're here and we're trying, we're not, you know, giving up. We're gonna fight. And so it was an incredible opportunity to just come together at the end of a very hard year and use those holiday sales as a way to drive revenue for our businesses. And we're back again. We're actually doing a pop-up again on Connecticut Avenue as part of the Golden Triangle Bids Grow Golden program. And so we are on Connecticut Avenue, and we have about 30 different brands that we're featuring. We're calling it our Women of Color pop-up, plus allies. And I've brought a couple of the products of the different brands that are being featured. And so I really want to encourage everyone to come out and support us there.
Fantastic. I still want to go back, though, because, you know, in the news reports now are showing that their products, automobiles, things that are becoming difficult, you know, for people to buy, the prices are high because of the supply chain. You know, products coming from other countries into the country. And shea butter originates in Ghana, right? And so was there a challenge that you experienced in getting the product that's the basis of your product?
Oh yeah, for my brand, if we want to just focus on Shailene for a second, absolutely. I mean, Ghana closed its borders for 4 months. And so a lot of countries in Africa, they had a much more restrictive response initially because of the lack of health infrastructure in a lot of these countries. They weren't going to take any chances. So I travel frequently and I couldn't travel for months on end. And so for our cooperative members, we had to cover visits to health clinics. We had to try and get communities that didn't have access to testing resources. And so I have an in-country team that runs and manages all of that. So thankfully, you know, they were supporting the various cooperatives that we work with across 14 villages in the north. But we had a really hard time getting inventory in place. So part of our revenue loss wasn't just because a lot of the large accounts I had, like for example, MGM, we supply their spa. The spa closed. It's reopening, and I'm really excited to share we'll be back in their spa later this year. But it was also inventory. We could not get not only shea butter, but also our components. And so a lot of people in CPG couldn't get their packaging because so much of our supply chains are dependent on China, and so much manufacturing is happening in China. And so all of those were really huge challenges to my core brand, Shailene. But over the last few months, you know, particularly with our launch with Macy's, we were able to get shipments in, we were able to increase our manufacturing, and we are growing, and we're experiencing a turnaround that I'm really excited about.
That's good news. That's good news. Anna, let's talk about the community that you know, what that community looked like, what were some of their issues, and just how you were able, I know, you know, providing food and was essential, but I'm sure people once, you know, sometimes when you open that door and you give a person a meal, it's like it opens them up to other opportunities to talk about their needs and how you were able to address those.
You know, I think what was interesting for us in the hospitality industry is we very much felt like we had two communities that we were serving. You were serving the workers who we were very much focused on in the hospitality industry and trying to also understand the very same issues that everyone was facing. They were feeling in a magnitude way because they also were suddenly in just such a period of uncertainty as it related to financial stability. And so all of the, you know, quarantining, and you're talking about an industry that is highly social. Hospitality is about bringing people together. And so how could we continue to find ways for people to feel like they need connection when, you know, one of the reasons at a certain point that the meal distribution became so important to us is we had people saying, this is the only time of day where I see another human or anyone asks me, how am I? And so just that need for human connection, I think that, you know, coming out of COVID, if we've realized anything about Maslow's pyramid, it's that human connection is a core element of what we need to survive. And so for us, not only through the worker relief program were we trying to make sure that we were providing, you know, online education and ways for people to connect over, you know, different types of bourbon classes and different types of education, because from our idea was if we could help the industry to come back stronger, that was really important. If people could come out of this with more knowledge and skills provided to them, that was really important. However, at the same time, as we were able to reopen, you know, in June of 2020, it also became really important, how do we serve our guests and our typical community who comes in? And we say that we have a mission with all of the venues that we create, that people feel welcome, that they feel safe, and that they feel acknowledged. And that only if you meet those three things can anyone ever attempt to have a really special experience or memory with anyone else. For us, it wasn't just about how do we do that in our venue for guests coming in, but how do we do that in a way where, think about this, was like pre-people getting vaccines. How could we also do that for our crew, who we knew we were asking? It was this like, it's this paradox that no one wants to talk about, where for us to be open as a business, we had to ask our workers, we had to ask our crew to put themselves in danger in order for us to be able to make the revenue we needed to provide the resources to protect them. It's like a paradox that there is no great answer to. And so how could we at the same time do small things to make them feel our workers feel welcome, safe, and acknowledged at the same time, so that they could even have a chance of creating that same type of environment for the guests coming in. And how do we, we were saying that it's really important, the hospitality community has a really important role to play in how a community reemerges and how they're able to reconnect. And so for us, it was about, speaking very candidly, we threw all of our eggs in a basket. Although we do pop-ups, it was not the time to do a huge theme change, but we were like, well, the community needs something to get excited about and rally around. Right. And so how do you make some gambles knowing that you're doing it for sort of this other purpose and hoping that the community reacts and is able to embrace it in the way that you intend.
So you have asked the question that I want Brian to answer, and that is, how do you do that? And how did you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Denise, I think you led with talking about how the pandemic has disproportionately impacted certain communities, right? And, I will not sit up here and pretend the boutique fitness community is overwhelmingly rich and overwhelmingly white, right? And that was not the community that was most disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. However, what we thought was our mission at Solid Core was to make sure that that community understood the challenges that were being experienced by underrepresented communities and also played a role in helping those communities. And so the things that we did on that front, first and foremost, were around education. And so, we hosted town halls, we brought in, and we did these publicly, not just for our team internally, but publicly, with leaders of organizing organizations and philanthropic organizations in cities all over the country to talk about what was happening in communities of color, what was happening within the LGBT community, what was happening for women, particularly single women, during the pandemic. So started with education, but then really moved toward how do we mobilize these people to provide a set of resources for these communities as well. And so we amplified the work that these organizations were doing so that our clients could contribute directly. And then we also hosted a number of fundraisers, even as our business, by the way, was sitting at 30, 40, 50% of what it was pre-pandemic. We were losing money hand over fist. We still made it a priority to make sure that we as an organization were taking the dollars that we were getting from our wealthy, overwhelmingly white community and allocating those dollars to these underrepresented and underserved communities that were most impacted by the pandemic.
I think it's amazing. I mean, I think you all have earned your angel wings because of not only what you did to try to survive, but also what you did to contribute to the communities that you served. Well, during this pandemic, what was the one thing that kept you awake at night, that made you say, if I could just do this? And was it about you or your business, or was it about the community that you were serving that you really strived to do, but just didn't know if it would make a difference? Brian, I want to start with you.
Sure, I can start with this one. This one, it's funny. This one, I don't know if this is going to be the answer that you were looking for, but it popped into my head right away as soon as you asked the question. But the thing that kept me up at night was, how do I stay stable? And I don't mean that in terms of mentally stable, but how do I, as a leader, serve as the steady hand for my organization? Because everything around us is moving. And as people are seeing the ground shift from underneath them, they're feeling their own sense of insecurity, lack of safety, their own anxieties. How can I continue to lead an organization that does important work for the communities that we serve by being as steady of a hand as I could be, while also, by the way, recognizing that I myself was feeling many of the same emotions, right? Not knowing what was going to happen. My husband works in the school system, so was he going to get COVID and be exposed as he's going in person all the time? I'm in the studios all the time. I'm having all those same emotions that everyone else is having, but trying to also navigate, I know what my organization needs from me most right now, and it's to be steadfast, to be a steady hand, to be confident in where we're trying to take the organization.
Wonderful. I just want each one of you see we're running out of time, but I want each one of you all to address that, because hopefully you're sleeping better now. But Anna.
I think that Brian really hit the nail on the head. You know, as a leader of an organization, everyone's looking to you at a time where, as I was saying, that you're trying to figure out a calculus equation you don't have the answer to. You know, the variables keep changing. And so how do you remain calm but steady? And I started saying the mantra of the antidote to fear is action. And so for us, it was about how can we continue to do something? We might not know that it's the exact right thing, but how can we continue moving because it was progress over perfection.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm just going to borrow your mantra thing because in 2020, I think for me, everything was just kind of falling apart. And like with so many other businesses and industries. And I had to actually just be vulnerable and be okay with admitting that it was a very difficult time and asking for help. And I think that we need to normalize leaders being able to ask for help and saying, you know what, I actually don't know what to do. And really figuring it out as a community. And that community is not only the ones we serve, but it's also our political community, the people, our elected leaders, you know, our spiritual communities, et cetera. And so for the first time in many years of being a business leader, I actually had to be very vulnerable and say, so much is so out of my control that I really need to just take a step back and admit that I need help right now. And my daily mantra was one day at a time. Every day I said that, one day at a time. I just need to get through this day. And that turned to weeks, that turned to months, and we're still standing. We're still here.
And I'm just curious if there's one place where you got help that you least expected, one person, one organization, someplace where you got help and you least expected it.
Yeah, for me, it was actually a lot of people from my high school and a lot of people from college that I hadn't communicated with in many years, honestly, that reached out, that purchased products that we had, or even just purchased a gift card because our inventory was so low. And people would send, you know, people that I haven't spoken to in decades, you know, reached out and said, hey, how can I help you right now? And part of it was not only COVID, but it was also around racial justice and everything that was happening around Black Lives Matter. So I was very surprised at the number of people that I hadn't been connected to that reached out and wanted to help and wanted us to survive and make it through.
Great. Anna?
I'm actually going to give a shout out to Ballywick, another local DC business. They reached out at the beginning and said, hey, we had this idea for a campaign that we were going to launch called Kindness is Contagious. We want to do it in conjunction with the Workers' Relief Fund. And the reason I mention that isn't just to show the power of partnerships and how DC came together, but it was also because part of what was super helpful was walking down the street in the middle of the pandemic and seeing people in the shirts and in the masks, and how much of an impact that had at sometimes really dark moments of realizing that there are people out there supporting you that you don't even know.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Brian?
Yeah, I would just say the biggest surprise help came from competitors. The fitness industry in general has been notoriously competitive. We don't talk to one another. We don't talk about how things are going. Like, we're all in our own lane. But the pandemic really brought out that spirit of community and shared destiny, and this notion that we are all stronger together. And yes, we compete and whatnot, but we're all out here trying to make it, and we got to share what we're seeing and what we're doing and how we're tackling these different issues and problems. And the community came together in a remarkable way, particularly here in the DC fitness community.
I know that there's probably a lot more we could share about our experiences and how we have become overcomers and survivors and realize we're much stronger than we even thought we were, thanks to this pandemic, if we can thank it for anything. But I appreciate you all being here with us today to share your stories. I know that there's a chapter 2 or 3 or 4, and I certainly want to hear those, or I'm sure the community would like to hear those as well. But I wish you all the best of luck, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Martin, and I'm board president of Think Local First DC. Think Local First's mission is to support responsible local businesses and create the conditions in which they thrive in in order to make Washington, D.C. a more vibrant, inclusive, and equitable place to live, work, and play. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our next speaker today, Anika Hobbs, founder, CEO, and lead curator of Nubian Human. Nubian Human, with stores in DC, Baltimore, and always on the web, is a social enterprise that specializes in sourcing and curating unique goods, fashion, and art by designers representing the global diaspora. They break the myth that artists cannot live through their creative abilities, and they have successfully partnered with close to 500 artists and designers from 6 continents and over 25 countries. They are a link that binds creative sustainability and international commerce. Please join me in welcoming Anika Hobbs.
I'd have to admit, this is not a feel-good story, but this is my truth. So in 2019, that was the year of order for us. In 2020, that was the year of action. This was the time that my business was going to truly, truly soar. We had 2 stores under our belt, and we had proven that we could scale. We would go big or go home in 2020 because all of our ducks were in a row, or so we thought. Take our biggest event, the Black Love Experience. Since 2013, every year this event has grown. In 2019, we worked with over 2,500 Black creatives, artists, and businesses and brands. And in 2020, this was going to be an even bigger year. This was the first year that we were able to get sponsors from corporations, big and small, and we had a full team. And our strength in making the event was going to be even greater. We were at the point where we were counting down the weeks and then the days. We had over $25,000 worth of rentals and materials. My storage unit was full of tents and furniture and hundreds of dollars of wine and alcohol by Black-owned brands. If you need a party, come see me. We had sound equipment and lighting and rehearsals and meetings after meetings after meetings. We had completed all these various types of marketing. We had yard signs and flyers and digital ads and even bus ads. So much so that everyone said they saw Black love everywhere. This was all leading up to March 21st, 2020. But on March 13th, we got a call. The call to shut down our businesses because of this contagious virus. Then the messages changed from a couple of days to a couple of weeks. Okay, but then there's no tissue. And you had to get sanitized. And you had to wear masks and social distance and stay inside. Stay inside. So how does that work for a business that has 2 stores and a producer of an annual festival? How does that work for a shutdown? It doesn't. We're about people and space, positive energy. That's why we build stores and that's why we hold events. So as many times as I tried to flip it and wait just one more week, it became apparent, this isn't gonna happen. And I went through all of these emotions, confusion and doubt and worry, mental fatigue, false optimism, denial. It was like I had bull in a china shop rage. This is like a real emotion for me. And then straight defeat. We had to close and we had to cancel this event. No money for staff or our teams, no money to pay rent. We were losing sponsorships. We had to give vendor and ticket refunds, and there were no real answers. My livelihood, better yet, our livelihood, completely stopped. Then one day, the lead curator for our Black Love Experience, she said she had an idea. She also said, Anika, I understand what you're going through, and if you want to quit, then we quit. She didn't know that I had just finished a full-on breakdown. Tears and snot and balled up in a corner. But one thing I don't do is quit. We mulled over her idea, turning it around and addressing all the what-ifs. We even had a 20-point COVID prevention plan. I mean, like Fauci and the CDC should know us. It was important that we serve and keep our community safe. So our emotions went from all of these bad things to creativity and humility, acceptance, and new growth in this new reality. We were turned down so many times, but little by little, there was light shed in our corner. Our teams, vendors, and artists, they never wavered. And we just knew we had to hold a festival that meant to heal our community that needed it the most. So we began to figure out how to navigate the system even more, created more contingencies, and convinced our sponsors to stay on. And eventually, after changing venues and postponing and then deciding to go all the way virtual, we made it happen. And as a company, we focused on maximizing our digital spaces. So in March, we shut down. But in April, we fully launched all of our websites. And in August, we successfully held our first Black Love experience virtually. But I have to say this, our community, like our customers and our supporters, they all rallied around us. They regularly let us know how important we were to Black-owned and brown-owned brands, and they intentionally voted with their dollars. Our artists and our vendors, they shared their stories, and we worked together to build bridges that allowed us, our businesses, to sustain uncharted hurdles of this coronavirus. We partnered on projects, and we gave each other special conditions to ease the burden. And most importantly, we gave each other grace. Now, I've seen minuses in the bank account. I am not gonna lie. I've had no staff, I've had no team, and sometimes I do daydream of what it was to be normal. But they say that every negative occurrence is bad because of how you dealt with it, not because of what happened. So we owned our success just by making it through 2020. Our doors are still open, and we had another successful year of the Black Love experience under our belt. But it is still very hard. We're still figuring it all out. I've taken this experience and I see it as this is where the seeds of resilience are planted, and most importantly, our opportunity to continue to grow. So after 8 years, as of September 14th of being in business, I'll raise you 100 and I'll see you in 8 more. Thank you.
You know, one of the difficult things for a small business owner, especially when in hospitality, is that you don't get a lot of permission to talk about how hard things are. And that was especially true, I think, during the pandemic. I think there was a real rush to, you know, welcome everyone back. And I remember I was talking with individuals and they would say, so how are you doing? And I'd say, oh, you know, it's really great to welcome back our regulars. And they'd say, yeah, well, how are you doing though? And I said, oh, you know what, it was great to bring all the crew back. It was great to see everybody again. And then, well, but how are you doing? And in the back of my mind, I wanted to say I'm working harder than I ever have my entire life. And the business isn't sustaining itself. And that was, you know, something that you're not really given permission to say or to admit, but it's the truth. And one of the things I love about Think Local First is I get to be a part of this community of like-minded, progressive small business owners, which is really important and hard to find. And I get to share that with them. I get to be in that vulnerable space with others and share that journey together. Because I think, and I still think we're in that moment, there's a real rush to just, all right, let's turn the corner, let's get this in the rearview mirror, and I want that, everybody wants that more than anything else. But we can't pass up this opportunity, I think, to be a little bit reflective. You know, there's something, it's a blinding flash of the obvious to say, but you know, there's something wrong with my business model where if I have to close for 2 weeks, I'm about to go out of business, right? There's something wrong with a business model where my best employees, they work one job from like 6 to 2, ride their bike to my restaurant and work, and that's life, right? And that's just how it is. And then for me, you know, I think 2020 really just gave us the opportunity to just say like, gosh, like it has to be better, right? There has to be a better way to do this. It just can't be the way we grew up learning about it.
On behalf of Mayor Bowser, thanks for joining the district's 3rd annual Retail Summit. Over the past 2 years, our business community has been through a lot. But one thing we could proudly say is that DC businesses are resilient. Our businesses are eager to recover, pivot, and build back better than before, and we're here to help. Since the pandemic, the Bowser administration has worked tirelessly to understand the needs of the business community and provide assistance and support they need. This summit is actually one example of that. In addition to continuing our signature Great Streets and Main Streets retail investment programs, over the past 18 months, we've also provided $155 million in business grants to assist in recovery of our local businesses, including the Bridge Fund, COVID-19 micro grants, Child Care Center grants, and more. But we're not stopping there. We know there's a lot more work to be done. So with Mayor Bowser's Fair Shop budget, we continue to use federal dollars to provide relief and growth opportunities for our businesses to pursue across all 8 wards. Mayor Bowser wants this to be an equitable recovery. We're looking forward to providing $80 million in relief through Small Business Rent Relief Program and the Hotel Recovery Grant Program, which will provide much needed support to our businesses. We also launched the $7.5 million Vitality Fund, which will allow us to attract new and high-growth companies to DC by providing grants to employers with 25 or more employees located in and committed to locate in the Central Business District. And we'll launch the $5.4 million Small and Medium Business Grant Fund. This will help us support activities that are likely to increase revenue of DC local businesses. We also know that a persistent challenge has been access to capital. As Director Christy Whitfield mentioned, earlier this summer we launched the DC Kiva Hub to provide microloans to our small businesses. And today, we're excited to announce a new partnership with SMBX to provide a new source of capital that local businesses need to thrive. The DC Rebuild Bond Program will use the SMBX marketplace to fuel up to $5 million in investments from community members to small businesses. And we're focused on historically disadvantaged businesses in wards 5, 7, and 8. I'm excited to welcome Annie Esser from SMBX to share a little bit more about this exciting new program.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you so much for your leadership, Deputy Mayor. We are very excited to partner with you and Mayor Bowser to use the DC Rebuild Bond Program to help small businesses connect with local investors to thrive and grow. The SMBX marketplace was inspired by the belief that there was a better way for small businesses to access the capital they needed to succeed. SMBX helps business owners bypass the banking system and directly connects them with everyday investors. By issuing a small business bond, local businesses can borrow capital from existing and new customers at competitive rates and raise needed funds to expand their business while increasing customer loyalty. By turning neighborhood fans into active investors, SMBX created a financial system that benefits a local community and helps to promote the cycle of wealth and prosperity right here in DC. For small businesses, the Rebuild Bond Program means fixed rates, no more private lending fees, zero origination fees, no personal guarantees, plus the ability to encourage customers to protect their investment by buying directly from the businesses they've supported. For investors, they can earn meaningful returns by lending money to their favorite small businesses and keep their investment dollars local where they can focus on community development. At SMBX, we believe in DC. We're invested in DC. We have an office here, and we're currently talking to community businesses as well as investors across the district, especially in wards 5, 7, and 8 who've been historically left out and denied capital. Thanks to the leadership of Mayor Bowser and Deputy Mayor Falchecchio, the DC Rebuild Bond Program is already underway. Any interested business can go to the smbx.com to schedule a free consultation on how we can help your business connect with investors in your community. We're excited for this opportunity, and we're looking forward to supporting economic development in the district.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone, although in this virtual environment. I'm here in my office in New York and couldn't join you in the district today. But my name is Jeff Hebert. I'm the president and partner of HR&A Advisors with our office across the country, but in DC, a strong presence in DC. And we've been honored to work with the district, with the Deputy Mayor's office, and with the partnership on the DC Small Business Plan and Roadmap. And we just wanted to give an overview of that project today and the work that we've been doing. What we've been looking at starts off with the small business ecosystem in the district. One of the things that we know is 81% of businesses have fewer than 20 employees. So we took that definition of having fewer than 20 employees, and what we realized is that's really a core of DC's economic engine. Taking into account self-employed workers, small businesses in DC support 1 in 4 jobs. 19,000 small businesses in the district, 91,000 workers employed by small businesses in the district, and 1 in 4 jobs in the district are supported by small businesses and self-employed businesses, all a very, very big part of the ecosystem in the district. What we know is the small businesses span all sectors of the city's economy. 46% are in office sectors, 37% are in local services, 12% in healthcare and education, and 5% in industrial sectors. But why are small businesses important to the district? 1, family wealth and economic mobility. Nationally, entrepreneurs have been shown to have greater wealth and economic mobility, especially Black entrepreneurs. 2, the promotion of local culture, vibrant neighborhood corridors, and a sense of place. And 3, something that I think we all can relate to, strong social networks. The city and many not-for-profit organizations offer a wide range of small business support programs in the district. There are 22 DC public agencies that offer or sponsor programs that support small businesses, 26 robust network of Main Street organizations, 11 bids, and over 40 technical assistance providers, all forming a part of that ecosystem that offers that small business support that's so needed in the district. To spotlight one in particular, the DC Main Streets. The DC Main Streets are a crucial component of the district's small business support, and that support flows through the Main Streets program. The district allocated more than $7 million in 2021 to Main Streets, leveraging a place-based approach that relies on strong networks of local stakeholders. In 2019, what that means is over 1,600 net jobs created, 60 net new businesses created, and since 2004, $350 million invested in public improvements and 600 net new businesses created, all showing the success of the DC Main Streets program. But despite the robust support that DC offers, the small business ecosystem faces many challenges. On the equity front, Black and brown business owners are underrepresented, accounting for 59% of district residents, but just 24% of all business owners in 2017. For long-term business challenges, only 81% of district businesses established after 2010 survived after 10 years, compared with 88% in nearby Arlington. And when we look at the impacts of COVID, certain small business heavy industries were devastated by COVID. District retail jobs declined by 12% from January 2020 to March 2021, compared to an overall 3% decline in jobs across the board. So what is the study that we've been working on with DIMPED and the partnership, and what is it that we have been looking at? We launched a comprehensive small business plan and roadmap study grounded in a digital business survey, business interviews, focus groups with community partners, and real estate professionals, and also align that with data analysis that we did on the backside. The goals of the study is to support equitable growth, support businesses at all stages of the life cycle, and to launch a combination of citywide and local efforts. What we realized in the small business trends is similar to the economy as a whole, small businesses are concentrated in office sectors, such as professional services and real estate, in local services, and dominated by accommodation and food, retail, and other services. And this chart, which may look a little detailed, sort of explores, particularly in the blue, the fewer than 20 employees, what that means. Small businesses drove DC's business growth from 2014 to 2019. The DC employer business growth by size and sector between that period, you see an over 620 net change in businesses with fewer than 20 employees, and 61 less net change in businesses with 20 or more employees. So you see that growth concentrated in those businesses with fewer than 20 employees, showing that that's really a backbone to the economy of the district. There are more accessible jobs in small businesses. Small businesses in high-paying sectors, which are really important to the economy, employ a greater share of workers without college degree than larger businesses in those sectors, showing that small businesses, as we've defined them, picked up more people without college degrees, meaning greater accessibility in the same sectors where you see greater shares of college graduates. And where are these small businesses located? The central core of DC has the largest share of small businesses in the district. Although roughly the same size in the west and north, the less wealthy, majority Black, east and south sub area of the city has far fewer businesses. The trends in storefront business visitation tells us that during COVID, visitation dropped across the district. The most significant drops were in wards 2 and 6 in the central core, where office-based businesses are, which largely shifted to remote work and where those types of jobs are concentrated. Beyond COVID, outreach has identified pervasive small business challenges for which we are developing solutions grounded in national best practices around streamlining regulations, access to capital, bridging the digital divide, entrepreneurship cultivation, capacity building, and real estate access and affordability. With that, we'd like to thank our partnership, both with the city and the economic partnership. And as we continue to structure the work for how we can support the small business ecosystem in the district, we look forward to the future. And with that, I think we want to turn it over to closing remarks, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you all so much for attending the 3rd annual DC Retail Summit. This year's summit, like the rest of the past year and a half, has brought many challenges and constant change. It has taken many shapes, but we are resilient and have supported each other throughout it all. And I'm thrilled to say DC is open. We're here, we're healthy, and we're all committed to making our city a place where businesses can thrive. I would like to recognize the team at the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership for their hard work over the last several months. They are the engine that drives our economic development efforts, and without their dedication, none of this would be possible. The 2021 DC Retail Summit is a testament to more hopeful days ahead. We've heard from so many inspiring business leaders in our community, and their stories underscore this hope. Thank you all for attending this morning and helping us forecast the future of DC retail. Have a great day.
Thank you to Pepco, Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership, Think Local First, D.C., Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, Executive Office of the Mayor, and Mayor Bowser. Remember, we are building a stronger community and ecosystem bring innovative ways to support small businesses and their employees. Thank you for attending the 2021 DC Retail Summit. Forecasting our future, powered by Pepco. DC is open.